Few things are more unsettling than missing people. In 2020 alone, over 543,018 people went missing. They vanished into thin air, leaving few or no pebbles behind for the authorities to piece together. In a world that is so interconnected, it can be hard to wrap your head around the fact that someone can completely blip out of the scene at any given moment. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 of the most mysterious and interesting cases of missing people. Missing man found inside Spanish dinosaur statue. Of all the places you would expect to find a body that has already passed away, maybe the last place you suspect would be inside a dinosaur. We are not just talking about any average dinosaur though. This departed man of interest was found specifically inside a papier-mâché dinosaur statue placed outside of a suburb in the bustling city of Barcelona. How could this man's body have found itself inside a Stegosaurus art project exactly? The police authorities in Catalonia are not exactly sure. However, their best guess is that the 39-year-old dropped his cell phone inside the statue, attempted to retrieve it, and ultimately fell into his demise. What is interesting is that he was not found right away. That might suggest that during his time of departure, no one else was around. If he was ever reported missing, then a dinosaur statue probably would not be anyone's first guess as to where he was. He was actually found later on by the senses of 2 visitors as they looked on at the sculpture. What the father and son pair found most intriguing was not the beauty of the artwork, but the bad smell that seemed to radiate from its contents. They decided to look in closer to see what the smell was. Within the cracks of the statue, the father suddenly noticed a body. Right away, he contacted the authorities. It turns out the man that had passed away had already been reported missing by his family. However, the authorities ultimately ruled out any foul play. They believe the departure from this life was purely accidental. He most likely dropped his phone, entered into the statue's legs headfirst, and got trapped. Regardless of how sad the loss of life might have unfolded, firefighters were sent to the scene to cut open the art project and remove the body. At the moment, it is still unclear how long the body had been sitting in there, but there is no doubt that it had been a couple of days at least. However, one thing is for sure, the next time you visit the suburb of Santa Coloma de Gramenet, you will not see a tall Stegosaurus in your midst. Missing Ryan Stuka. If you were ever to venture up the roads of Sun Peaks in Canada, you would have witnessed a pretty unsettling scene. On either side of you, billboards would have constantly reminded you of the mysterious disappearance of a young lift operator from the ski resort back in 2018. On that fateful night, Ryan Stuka was a 20-year-old healthy man from Alberta when he suddenly vanished from thin air following a party. He left at around 2 a.m. and had not been seen since. That was the catalyst to what would be a months-long search effort and police investigation into his haunting disappearance. Hundreds of people from the British Columbia and Alberta communities quickly volunteered to aid local search and rescue teams in their mission to find him. To this day, the search reveals no clues. However, it still remains open and ongoing, very much at the top of everyone's mind in the communities. A search dog was even brought onto the scene. The owner, a search and rescue team member named Mike Ritzy, hopes that bringing his search dog out into the surrounding areas might lead to some new insights. If the mountains and ribboned-off areas have already been extensively explored, he was determined to expand the scope of the search. The very fact that the case possesses so few answers is one that is quite unsettling. With no clue as to where he might be or what happened to him, everyone is living life just a little more cautiously. Ultimately, the townspeople want closure for Ryan and his family. They are hoping that one day someone will come forward and say something. Until then, the next time you decide to visit the Sun Peak ski resort, you might just want to be a little more careful. The case of Immaculate Basil. To most of her closest acquaintances, there was no doubt that Immaculate, otherwise known as Mackie, had lived a hard life. Straight from the get-go, she revolved in and out of the foster system with her siblings. Once she finally escaped, she eventually settled on the Cuz Shea Reserve near Grand Rapids, British Columbia, and survived on part-time jobs, like becoming a secretary and a teacher. Mostly, she was known to be a housewife that rarely desired to leave home. With a loving husband and a 7-month-old child by her side, her life was pretty much set, or at least people thought it was until she fatefully disappeared. That is when her family started noticing the cracks beginning to form. They were first surprised when Mackie divorced from her husband. Then, on the night of her disappearance, they yet again felt it was out of character for her to be partying and drinking by herself. However, several witnesses would confirm that she was doing so. Once the party ended, Mackie got into a car with her 2 friends, Victor and Keith. However, before they could arrive at their destination, their vehicle got into an accident. Though it was known that Victor decided to look for help by walking along the streets in soaking wet clothing, no record of Keith's actions was made. The very next morning, Mackie's siblings instantly felt something was off when she did not answer their daily phone calls. That worry only intensified the next day, which prompted them to look for her on their own. After 4 straight days without any results, the police were finally notified about her disappearance. Once the search went underway, the stories and theories became fuzzy. Victor's claims were especially suspicious. From his own mouth, he said that he went to look for help in wet clothes. However, witnesses said that they saw him an hour's distance away from the car crash site around the time it supposedly happened. What is even stranger is that there was no record filed of this car crash ever happening. The only pieces of evidence that it supposedly occurred were scrap pieces and a broken tree. But what exactly happened to Mackie following the crash? Victor and Keith both agreed that she decided to go back home and separate from them on her own, which, if they were responsible for any crime, would give them plenty of time to commit it. In fact, it could be argued that no one seems like a better suspect than the 2 men, especially Victor, who was an outsider from the reservation and had a history of assault and crimes. However, another theory is that perhaps Mackie did actually leave the site of the crash and fall victim to a wild animal, because she might not have been used to the feeling of being drunk, and that might have caused her to become prey. Yet, there has been a complete lack of blood or a body to support this theory. Even though the reserve is more remotely located, the lack of issues with any wild animals historically leaves more to be desired from this theory. The final theory is that if Mackie had indeed left the scene of the car crash, that she could have been kidnapped along her way home. Authorities believe this is the least likely theory out of all of them. In the present day, there is still no result about the whereabouts of immaculate Basil. Any supposed sightings of her were determined to be fake or unlikely, and despite the notion that foul play could have been involved, no one has come forward with any evidence. Perhaps only time will tell if this mysterious case will ever be resolved. But what do you make of these unsettling disappearances? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.